Let's go. I have some slides here. Let me see. Hold on. So go over here. We'll start with some of the classics that we can both kind of talk about. Now, what is that? Have you ever seen that movie right there?
Yeah, I sure have.
Gremlins.
Because I'm a big Christmas movie person. I cover all these Hallmark movies, and every now and then I kind of like to put on one of these holiday horror movies because you can only handle these sweet rom-coms so long.
I think people automatically lump Gremlins into like the horror comedy category, but there's some heavy stuff in the first Gremlins, especially with Phoebe Cates talking about her father breaking his neck and all this stuff. Yeah. And Stripe was a demented little sucker,
Yeah, it really was.
I mean, some of the stuff's even scary in Gremlins.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love Gremlins. So
yeah, I did a fun episode of Hallmarkies podcast with Sean Chandler where we talked about Gremlins and Anna and the Apocalypse. Did you ever go see that, Anna and the Apocalypse?
Yes, I did. The musical?
Yes.
Very good. Yes.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more of like a cult following because it's just so unique that with it being a Christmas holiday zombie musical. That it just seems like the kind of thing that would have sort of a cult following. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, especially since it's, anytime you can make yourself a Christmas horror movie, that automatically puts you into that category where you could be seen every single year. So
it's true.
I will say I'm starting to see Anna and the Apocalypse being mentioned more every year in the horror groups. So I think it's finding its way.
Because I was really surprised some of the characters that turned. I thought, I did not think that.
Do you know what this movie is?
Yeah. Oh, this one. I do not.
Nobody ever knows what this movie is. This movie came out in 1981. It's directed by Michael Crichton, the writer. It's called Looker. Looker
I've heard of that.
Yeah, Looker is rated PG. And the reason I know about it is because of HBO. Back, I was a kid of the 80s. And I remember when I was young, I used to just watch HBO like constantly. And they would show a lot of these deeper cut type movies. And I used to watch Looker all the time. And I loved it. Now, I'm going to be honest. This movie's PG and has more nudity than most R-rated movies, especially today.
Yeah.
Okay, but even like in the 80s, this movie had more nudity than those movies. So as a young adolescent male, there might have been a reason why I was watching this, but it's also a really good Rachel leaves. No, it's also a really good suspenseful movie. It's a thriller, you know. So I knew you wouldn't know this one, but I'm always trying to recommend this to people. Yeah. I'm gonna, because I've been reviewing a lot of deep cuts lately, so I think I'm gonna review this one. I just got to buy the Blu-ray, but
that's like the best when you find a hidden gem and people see it. Oh, that was actually really good. Like that makes the whole job worth it, I think.
I mean, I'll admit this, Rachel. I get more passion out of reviewing these deeper cut movies than I do the Star Wars and the Marvel movies. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy discussing those movies. They have a lot to discuss, but just everybody talks about them. So, and in the comments, when I do these deeper cut movies, I get so many people saying, thank you so much for, some people even say, I'm going to watch this movie tonight. It's like direct automatic gratitude. And, I just love talking about movies that nobody else talks about. So that's why I wanted to show you this and recommend Looker, not because of nudity, but because it's actually a good story.
Yeah. Cool.
That the early 80s definitely had a certain vibe to them. You know what I mean? So just a kind of creepier vibe.
Yeah. I tell you when, this is very random. I didn't have it on my list, but there's a stop motion animated short called Foxed, which you should look up. It is so creepy and so effective in what it does. I really enjoy it. Look up Foxed.
It's Foxed?
Yes. It's about a girl who gets abducted by these foxes. You have to watch.
Wow.
Just trust me. It's really good.
All right. Yeah. I will add that to my list. When did that come out?
2015.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just like
All right.
it's just a little like 5-minute animated short. Just really good.
What about this movie right here?
Poltergeist.
Yes.
Yes.
One of my
A lot of those in the comments I'm seeing about
yeah.
Poltergeist.
Yeah, Poltergeist is one of my all-time favorite horror movies ever. And doesn't matter the rating. I think
Yeah.
I'm learning something about myself. I love horror movies that deal with family,
Hmm.
and the loss of a loved one, or the fear that a loved one might pass or be taken or killed or whatever. And I mean, Poltergeist takes probably the most intense, the worst possible scenario. Your youngest child. She's like almost just out of toddler age. She's just so innocent.
Yeah.
And then for her, this evil, this demon to take her, and it deals with the supernatural, and having to pull her through, and there's some crazy stuff going on in Poltergeist, and it's shocking to me that the movie is not R, given some of because it's some of the scariest imagery I've seen in movies.
Do you think Spielberg directed it? There's a lot of people think that he really did.
This is the question that or the topic that constantly gets discussed. And I will say Spielberg did, I guess, sort of settle this. And he said, yeah, of course, I'm a producer. Of course I was on set, but Hooper definitely directed this movie. And I think even some of the actors stated Toby Hooper was on set most every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you could even say that this probably happens more than you think. Like you could take Cobra, the Stallone movie. It's widely documented that Stallone really directed that movie, because he was on set every day, and he was pretty much telling everybody what to do. And the George B. Cosmatos was kind of afraid of Stallone because of how big he was at the time. And so when Stallone was on the set, he kind of just took a back seat and let him do his thing. And I think when you're dealing with not just big stars, but big directors like Spielberg, you might say Spielberg's on the set. Maybe he has more say than Toby Hooper does. I think but did he probably direct some of it? Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure his ideas were there, but I think Toby Hooper, and we'll never know, but I think Toby Hooper probably did a good portion of the movie, even though it feels very much like a Spielberg movie.
Yeah, I actually haven't. It's a blind spot for me. I haven't seen it.
So, you're kidding me. You've never seen Poltergeist?
I've never seen it. I need to get on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I'm telling you, you got to see. You know what? And I love I think it's the score is probably one of my favorite horror scores. It's got this beautiful cherubic type sound, it's just one of those scores that immediately sticks with you. Yeah. Wow. You got to see freaking Poltergeist. It's so good with dealing with family, and there's some great like gags in there too, where there's like this stack of kitchen chairs on top of the dinner table. And in the beginning of the scene, they're around the dinner table like they should be. And then Jo Beth Williams like walks out of frame. And then when she comes back into frame, they're on top of the table. And so, no CGI back then. When she walked out of frame, they had a whole crew just putting chairs on top of the table, and it was kind of terrifying. But and it's a broad daylight scene, which that's another test for if you can scare an audience in the broad daylight. That's something to be said about that. So
true.
All right, let me go to the next one. We're going through the classics here. What about that one? Have you ever seen that one?
Looks familiar.
That is The Gate. That's Stephen Dorff on the left there. Now, I'll tell you this right now. I love The Gate, but I haven't seen it in maybe decades. I haven't seen the movie in ages. But it's just one of those like Monster Squad, just children's horror, where these I think they're like demons or something, and they come up from under the ground. But it's a deeper cut. But a lot of people seem to really love this movie, and I loved it when I was a kid, for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Tourist Trap. Have you ever seen Tourist Trap?
Mm-mm.
Now I can't fault you because I saw Tourist Trap for the first time a couple of years ago. This movie's PG-13, came out in the early 80s, and it's got some of the creepiest freaky. It's like it's a slasher, but like I don't think this movie would be made today, and if they tried to make it, it wouldn't dare be able to capture the creepiness that the original did. Texas director, and I think especially back then, Texas directors, they had a certain flair about their direction. And Tanya Roberts was in it. Oh, what's that? Have you ever seen that movie?
Yes.
This is the one that you came to me and you were like, hey, we should review this movie together.
Yeah. Watcher in the Woods. Yes.
Now, what's your memories of Watcher in the Woods?
Well, I didn't watch it until I was doing this Disney Scares Month series. And it was one of the first ones that I covered in that series. And so, yeah, and I'd heard about it, but it's just one of those ones I hadn't watched. So yeah, it was fun to catch up with it. And then we reviewed. So I've reviewed it twice actually on my channel.
Oh, okay. So the first time you watched it was within the last few years, right?
Oh, it was 2016 is when I first started the Disney Scares Month series. So yeah, that was the first time I saw it.
This brings up a question actually, because The Watcher in the Woods might be one of my very first horror movies that I ever watched. Because remember back in grade school, elementary school, and they would show you movies. And I remember they showed this movie, Watcher in the Woods. You know, it's a Disney movie. And this was Disney's answer to The Exorcist. Like Disney wanted to make their own Exorcist type of movie. I don't know if they intended to try to scare the audience as much as like, how do you compete with The Exorcist in terms of scares? But yeah, that's what they were trying to do. And I think it failed miserably back then. But I don't know if it became a cult classic. But it always stayed with me because it was one of the first ones I saw. I thought it was really good, actually. I thought it did have some creepy stuff in it. What is your first? Do you have like a first horror memory that you can remember?
Well, honestly, one of the first horror movies that I really remember, and it's not really a horror movie, but it is pretty scary, is actually Pinocchio. It's definitely and in Snow White and some of those other early Disney movies.
Snow White had some creepy stuff in it.
Yeah,
for sure.
It has some pretty scary moments. But the first real was Return to Oz. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that has some.
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've seen it.
Very scary imagery. There's one scene where she's walking through a hallway of heads. And,
wow.
the witch.
That would be scary today.
yeah. But the scene in Pinocchio where Lampwick changes into a donkey is pretty darn scary.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
You know, Disney did have some creepier
The Coachman
movies way back when. You know.
Yeah, the Coachman, he's turning these little boys into donkeys. Yeah. And the thing that's kind of, and then you have Peter, that he's still like part human. He still can talk. He's like, I don't want to be a donkey. Oh my gosh. So like Disney, the Coachman just throws him over to the rest. And then the thing that's crazy in retrospect about Pinocchio is that there's no retribution of any kind. Like for all we know, Pleasure Island is still going to this day. We don't know. It was terrifying. And then Monstro is pretty scary.
Would you say Mobster?
Monstro, the whale.
Oh, Monstro. Okay.
It's pretty scary in Pinocchio, and then you see Pinocchio lying face down in the puddle. And
hey, did you ever? Wasn't the Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman?
Yeah,
is that a Disney movie?
Scary. Yeah.
That one creeped me out when I was young.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So
and there's the Devil and the Night in Bald Mountain. That was pretty scary.
I think Disney back then it had a different flavor than Disney today. Disney today feels kind of, for lack of a better phrase, watered down for some of the stuff.
So in the remake that they did of Pinocchio, Robert Zemeckis directed, it was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Like it was absolutely atrocious. And in the Pleasure Island sequence, they replaced, because in the original film they're smoking cigars and drinking beer because they're supposed to be doing bad things. That's why they get turned into donkeys. Well, in this one, they're drinking root beer and eating candy. I'm like, how is this different than Disneyland? Like what?
Hey, weren't there like two Pinocchio movies that came out around
Yeah.
the same time? Because you had Guillermo del Toro doing one too.
Thankfully, we had a redemption for Pinocchio,
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro's version, which was really different, but it wasn't really a remake of the Disney classic. But that remake was absolutely atrocious. The animated characters, Tom Hanks was really bad. The humor was really bad.
Yeah.
They make a Chris Pine joke at one point. He's like, "Oh, are you made of pine, Chris Pine?"
Jesus. You automatically dated your movie when you did that, dude.
But anyway, yeah, that's how you can tell that they have completely lost any sort of edge when they're putting in root beer and candy
Yeah.
instead.
Did you get the goodie box for Pinocchio? For Guillermo del Toro's?
Yeah.
They gave you like this book of like you can't even buy this stuff. And the book was like super thick and the detailed artwork. And I was like, wow, this is gorgeous.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, let me go to the next one. I think we're going to start getting to our picks here in a minute. I just wanted to go through a couple of classics. Okay, here's one for me. Drag Me to Hell. Sam Raimi did a lot of people in my comments, because I was promoting this stream, there was quite a few of them that were like, what? Drag Me to Hell is actually PG-13. Most people think it's R. Have you seen this one?
I have. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, me too. I just watched it again. Yeah, it's Sam Raimi. It's like full tilt Sam Raimi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's some people say it's almost like an unofficial Evil Dead movie, because I'm trying to remember, but like there's this coin with this old lady and she's able to like open the gates of hell or something. Like, it's been a while since I saw it. I even reviewed it too, but it shows you how my memory is. But I just remember the movie just being completely off the rails and bonkers in the best way. Just really fun.
It really is.
And the main actress, I haven't seen her in anything else. You know,
maybe she got truly cursed.
Could be. Next one, The Final Girls. This is one of those PG-13 slashers.
No, I haven't heard of this.
Never even heard of it. It came out in 2015. No. The funny thing about The Final Girls, get this. There were two movies that came out around the same time. One of them was called The Final Girl, and the other one was called The Final Girls. And to make things even crazier, the guy on the left, Chad will help me out. Alexander, I'm trying to remember his name, but he was in both movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very strange.
So funny.
Rachel, if I could recommend, because I know your taste in movies, if I could recommend any movie on this list, it would have to be this one, because it's just fun with a capital F. That's what it is. And basically the premise of it is kind of like Last Action Hero, the Schwarzenegger movie, because but there's a lot of heart to it, because the main character, which is Taissa Farmiga in the middle, her mother was an 80s like scream queen. And so her mother died in a car accident. And so she goes to the theater to see her mother, and she gets pulled into the movie. And so her and her friends spend the rest of the movie in a movie, an 80s slasher. And so they're trying to find their way out of it. And it's hilarious. It's fun. I wouldn't say it's scary, but it definitely pokes fun at like Friday the 13th, stuff like that. You know?
Cool. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm giving you a guarantee. All right, Chat, is this a guarantee? She will love this movie. It's so fun.
Okay, cool.
See, so if I did anything on the stream, I turned you on to some movies. All right.
Okay, good.
Insidious. Now, I don't know if you've seen Insidious, but
no, I've heard a lot of my friends enjoy them. My brother is a fan, but I've never seen them.
It's weird for me because I like when I'm watching an Insidious movie, especially the first one, I'm like, this is really good stuff. It's really creepy. James Wan directed it. But for the life of me, it's the one franchise that automatically just leaves my brain as soon as I walk out of the theater. I don't know what it is. Maybe the plot's a little, because it's the Further, I think is what they call it, where they go into like this other dimension or something like that. But it's just the one franchise that maybe I just don't care about it as much, because I just completely forget about what the movies are about. But when I watch them, I have a good time.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a movie like that or a franchise like that? Like you watch it and then it just leaves your brain right after?
Well, since I cover Hallmark movies, there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
But I have a good
Perfect
time. Like,
example.
they're fun, but they're not like especially memorable. A lot of rom-coms
Yeah.
are like that for me.
Well, I mean, I guess you
But
could
I'm
say
thinking of
those
more.
Netflix rom-coms. Oh my God. I can't. Those Netflix rom-coms are rough, because a
Yeah,
lot of it's the
yeah.
same
There are
formula
really
over and
bad
over and
ones.
over.
Yeah.
So maybe Quentin Tarantino was right.
There are
Okay.
some good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the To All the Boys movies, I think those are really good. I like a movie called Set It Up. That one's a lot of
Yep.
fun. So there's some good ones, but yeah, that's what we do for you at Hallmarkies podcast. We weed through all the bad ones so that you know which ones to watch.
That sounds like a fun podcast, though,
Yeah,
because I mean, how many Hallmark channels are out there, So
yeah. There's a lot of
that's a
copycats
niche
these
for
days.
sure.
Yeah.
And I remember, like what's the difference between a Hallmark movie and an after-school special?
Well, the after school specials are usually more like issues, like a
Yeah.
issue based, where they do some dramas, and they're starting to do more on Hallmark with the new
Hmm.
regime that they have. But traditionally speaking, they were pretty much your light rom-coms because for a long time, Hollywood just wasn't making, not only were they not making rom-coms, but they just weren't making movies for women. For
Yeah.
about a decade, we were
Yeah.
getting very few. Almost every single movie made was being made for 17-year-old boys, and and we're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence in the last 2 years, which I'm really happy about. But I think a lot of it comes to successes of things like Bridgerton and some other series and things that have been successful. But yeah, it's a lot of people turn to Hallmark because that was the only place you could watch rom-coms.
Yeah, I think in a lot of mainstream movies at a certain time frame, women kind of serve the same purpose in every
Yeah,
movie. And I think the mistake, and let me know if you disagree with me on this, but I think the mistake Hollywood sometimes makes is they um, overload or they overly front load to try to correct a problem. When
yeah,
they might say we're not getting enough movies with strong women, and so what Hollywood does is they give us 127 movies with strong women. And so then
yeah.
people start getting annoyed with it instead of
Well,
kind of easing it in there.
yeah.
And plus, when you do that, it's hard to stick out from the pack.
Well, and a lot of those movies about strong women are really actually not made for women. They're made for 17-year-old boys who want big
Yeah.
butt women. And there's nothing wrong. Like, I want all of it. I want to go and see Wonder Woman kicking butt. I want to see, all of that. I want to see those kind of strong women's, but you can be a sweet, simple woman, traditional feminine woman, and still be strong. You
Yeah.
don't have to be, kicking butt. And so it's nice that we see all different kinds of women.
I think one solution to that issue I've seen it works is making it more of a collaborative thing
Yeah.
where you have a male and a female working together. Like you could take Aliens with
Hmm.
James Cameron and Sigourney Weaver. I know for a
Yeah.
fact Sigourney Weaver had a heavy say
That's
into
true.
what Ripley was about. I mean, if you
Hmm.
watch the behind the scenes, you'll see James Cameron talks about those meetings that he would have. You can't just write Ripley
Yeah.
without Sigourney Weaver's input.
Or even look at Everything Everywhere All at Once, with Michelle Yao, like
Yes.
taking the lead and being very involved in every aspect of that film.
Yep.
And you can tell. And I think we need romance. Romance is part of most people's life, and you
Absolutely.
want to see it on screen. And there's something about a rom-com that's inherently hopeful. There's always going to be a happy ending. Things turn out good for our protagonists, and we need that in this world.
Yeah. And you know what else we need? Good writing.
Yeah,
And it doesn't matter the gender.
it's true.
Great writing will always shine through.
Yeah.
Like you could take like the first Rocky. Stallone always says it's a romance. It's not a boxing movie.
That's true.
And it's written
Yeah.
as a romance. I mean, his main focus throughout that movie isn't to become champion of the world. He just wants to go the distance. And the big thing is when he meets Adrian, automatically she becomes his world. And it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the rest of the journey is through the movie. He just at the very end of the movie, what is he doing? He's screaming Adrian. It's a love story.
Well, and there's a lot of horror movies that are love stories. Look at The Quiet Place. for
Yeah,
example,
exactly.
is totally a love story.
And I'm sure Emily Blunt probably had some, because I know her husband. Why am I drawing a blank on his name?
John Krasinski.
Yeah, John Krasinski. He wrote it, right?
Yeah, I think
And I'm
so.
sure she had some input on that. So that's why both those movies I think are great.
Yeah, agreed.
Which is funny because we're talking about PG-13 movies. I don't even have them on the list, but they're both great examples of strong PG-13 horror movies.
Yeah.
So, all right, going to the next one. I think we're going to get to your list here pretty soon. Oh, we talked about
The
Boogeyman. Now, this one, When a Stranger Calls. Have you seen this one?
Mm-mm.
This one is, I see a lot of mixed reviews on this one. Even when I that's why I put her on the thumbnail, because
is that one similar to Scream?
No, not really. Not really.
Okay.
Now, the original When a Stranger Calls came out in 1979, and the first 20 minutes of it is like the best exercise in tension ever put to film. And it goes with that old urban legend of the killer. He calls her on the phone, and at the end of the 20 minutes in the first movie, he says, "I'm in the house." You know, that's kind of the hook. So they thought, hey, if we're going to remake this movie, let's don't just remake the movie where the first 20 minutes is that, and then we follow the killer for the rest of the movie. This one, let's make an entire hour-and-a-half movie off of that first 20 minutes.
Well, maybe that's what they were paying homage to in Scream, though.
It could be. Yeah, because in Scream, it's the whole telephone thing, too. But what I love about this one is that it really only focuses on tension. There is very little blood. Even there's very little killing in this movie, but the killer is downright chilling throughout, and they rarely show his face. You know, I don't think they even do show his face, but the atmosphere is just gorgeous. If you want me to be superficial about movies, give me great atmosphere. That gets me halfway there. And boy, this movie just is loaded with it. Plus, the house she's in is really cool. So here's another recommendation for you, Rachel. It's there's very little I guess horror. It's more of a thriller, but a lot of people in my comments, there's people that don't like this movie. I think they wanted it to be something that it wasn't. I think if you understand what this movie's going for, then you'll appreciate it a lot more. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When a Stranger Calls remake, look it up. By the way, that's my daughter's first horror movie, and she loves this movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. All right. 10 Cloverfield
now we're in
Lane.
My pick.
I'm gonna let you have the floor for this one. Go ahead. I've never seen this one. I'm just
kidding. You've never seen it? Oh my gosh.
Just kidding. Okay. I've seen it.
Oh, you've seen it?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay, good. Well, so this movie is pretty simple. It doesn't really have anything to do with Cloverfield, but it's about this woman who gets abducted by this what do they call it? This guy who I can't think of the word else, but it is end of the world guy.
Kind of like a conspiracy theorist.
And there's like a word for it, I can't think of it. But anyway, and by John Goodman. And I think what it does so well is that not only is it just like scary because he is crazy, but like it legitimately leaves you guessing of whether the end of the world is really actually happening or not.
Yeah.
Whether, like, how much is he like lying? Is he making this completely up, or is it true? And I don't know. I just think it's really tense and well acted, well done.
I think it was a genius move to go from the first movie, which was really big, and it was like a freaking gigantic monster movie in the city, a lot of locations to play with. So let's take the second movie and make it just an isolated environment, and this character just stuck, and we don't know what's out the door, outside the house, and how's she going to get out of this. And I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead did a really good job, just I guess ratcheting up the tension with this character. But I love 10 Cloverfield Lane, really good. And I'll even say when I first saw it, I wasn't the biggest fan of John Goodman's portrayal of the character because I don't think I understood what they were going for. I think I wanted a certain type of kidnapper because I love kidnap movies. But then after I watched it again, I started thinking, I kind of see what they're going for. You don't have to have the guy be creepy because at the beginning of the movie, he seems very friendly, and he seems like a teddy bear. and he just ends up being kind of insane. But I
There's
don't
that,
think
like,
John Goodman is necessarily scary, but he still plays the role quite well, I
when
think.
there's that, like, big drum of acid, like, that is such a crazy scene.
Coraline. No, I don't think I've seen this one. So
Yeah. So this is based on the Neil Gaiman story, and it is a genuine animated horror film. There's there's a lot that I would say maybe thriller, but this is like an actual horror film. Basically, like what happens is Coraline is in this kind of haunted house. Their parents have just moved there. Her parents, and the thing I like about this movie is that Coraline ends up having to fight for people that don't necessarily deserve her love. Like her parents are terrible, but she gets sent into this alternate reality, I guess you'd say, this rabbit hole that she goes down, and she first thinks that there's these perfect versions of her parents. They have these button eyes, which are terrifying. But at first it seems like, oh, they're giving her all the food that she likes. They care about her. They're spending time with her. All of this, but then the longer she's there, the more she realizes this facade is a lie. And so she actually has to kind of fight for her parents, who again aren't actually very good people. And the animation is absolutely amazing.
it looks amazing.
Yeah. And the voice acting is great. The story's great. It's a really good gateway introduction to a lot of these tropes of horror movies for kids. It's a really good one.
I'm definitely going to add that to my list because I'm looking for more animated horror movies. They don't come along that often.
Yeah.
So when they do, I do like to give them a chance.
So now you got Coraline and Foxed on your list.
Yeah. Now, here we go. Happy Death Day. We can have a good conversation about this one because I guess I can go first on this one.
Yeah.
I have a weird relationship with this movie because it's slasher, and I should like it because of, the way she dies. It fits in with the context of the movie and the story because she wakes right back up.
Right.
And as a slasher fan who admittedly does like a little bit of blood in my slasher movie, as soon as she's killed, she automatically wakes up. You don't get to see the kill,
I can see that.
Technically, I'm wrong for being upset about that, but that's just the way it is. So, but I think the main actress is fantastic. I've never had a problem with her. I love her in these movies. I think the killer's mask is a little weird and silly. Kind of reminds me of like Valentine, that slasher from 2000, where it looks like a Cupid mask, but this one looks like just a cherub. But yeah, I think they're fun movies, but I really hated the second one because the second one was more of a science fiction comedy than a horror movie. So, but
yeah, I mean, I can see, because the second one, it's like, what do you do? How do you follow? Like, you can't do another time loop story, so it's tricky. I still remember enjoying it, but yeah, like instantly forgot it. So I guess it's one of those for me. The second one, but the first one, I mean, I am a sucker for time loop stories. I almost always enjoy them, and it was fun, kind of putting all the different pieces together from each loop, and yeah, the baby face, it's weird, but I enjoy it. And Jessica Rabbit, she's great.
I do love good time loop movies. Groundhog Day obviously being like the best.
Yeah.
But I remember when this was announced that it was going to be a time loop movie and it's a slasher. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds perfect. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So maybe I boosted it up. My expectations were a little bit too high for it, but I'm not alone though, because there was a lot of debate about the amount of horror in this movie, and especially the second. So much so that the director kind of got annoyed with it, and that's why he made the movie with Vince Vaughn, the swap movie. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but
yeah, Freaky, isn't it? Freaky.
Yeah, Freaky.
Yeah,
Freaky's great, and he's like, "Oh, you want horror? Okay, now I'm going to give you slasher horror," and that movie is full of great kills. So I guess that's the one I really like, but it's still a fun movie. I like the first Happy Death Day, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody in the comments says Coraline's parents aren't terrible. They're just exhausted from working hard to buy a house and raise a preteen. and we can agree to disagree on that one. I think at least in Coraline's perspective, for her, she feels like they ignore her, and so for her to
Yeah.
fight for them over what seems like the perfect parents, I think is interesting. But anyway, all right.
Jaws.
Next up,
Let me ask you a question about Jaws.
Yes.
Do you think Jaws might be the most terrifying PG slash PG-13 movie ever made? Is there a case for that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a case for it. I mean, there's some real stakes early on. I mean, when the little boy gets killed, the girl, there's a lot of like death in the movie, and so it builds tension very effectively. And I think I especially love this movie because I love the ocean so much,
Yeah.
and I love swimming, open water swimming in particular. And for something to be that scary for something that I love so much is, I think, says a lot. And it's also like an interesting movie about kind of groupthink and
Hmm.
and it's so well written, so well done.
I think, man, you could unpack. I mean, like you could really just do a freaking full class on Jaws and how nobody's safe, and I think the reason they cast mostly like they didn't have a big star in this movie back in 75, the main character was Roy Scheider, who was more of a character actor. So if he died,
And
you wouldn't really be that shocked.
it's true.
But they're killing kids in this movie. It's opening up with a naked woman getting killed in the water, and just they terrify you from the start to set you up for, okay, you're in for a ride and anything's possible in this movie. And then it delivers like multiple times throughout the movie.
When
Go ahead.
When the pandemic was was going strong, I actually went and saw this at the drive-in. I mean, I'd seen it before, but it's like a perfect movie for the drive-in.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to see a movie that has like tons of dialogue at the drive-in.
No.
And this just has great atmosphere, and it just suits it, I think, very well.
It's so well written too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you listen to Hooper, especially Richard Dreyfuss, he's kind of like the comic relief, but you take him seriously. And then you got Quint, who is just this old geezer who is set in his ways and just an asshole.
Yeah.
You just got three different types of characters there that play off of each other so well. You got the Indianapolis scene. It's one of the best written shark movies ever.
Yeah.
And it's easily the greatest shark movie ever. And when this movie first came out, my dad tells me this because he saw this in the theater, and he was like, everybody was afraid to go into the ocean after Jaws. It was a phenomenon. Everybody was talking about it. And first movie to make $100 million domestically, created the blockbuster. The term blockbuster came from Jaws. So it still
holds up. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made.
Oh, it is. It is. As a matter of fact, Bryan Singer, and I'm probably a slew of other directors, but Bryan Singer, he watches Jaws every year. He says it's his favorite movie of all time. And it's crazy that Steven Spielberg, this was his second movie. He's 27 years old when he did this movie. And if you look at the set conditions and how the shark, Bruce, kept breaking down constantly, the amount of stress that was on set, you got this, in the documentary, Richard Dreyfuss, he says, people don't realize behind the scenes, we are just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And we just want to shoot, but we can't because they can't get the freaking. And so he said, on Martha's Vineyard, they'd hear, the shark is not working. The shark is not working. And they would just, as soon as they'd say, the shark is working, everybody, yeah. And everybody didn't run up the set. And maybe that's why there was so much energy.
Yeah.
But this movie should have been horrible based on the set conditions and the amount of stress. And, Steven Spielberg looked like he was about to have a nervous breakdown.
And not seeing the shark very much ended up being to its benefit.
Yeah. I think if it would have worked, if the shark would have worked, then we probably would have saw the shark more, and maybe it wouldn't have been as great. It's theater of the mind, and if you can put something in here that you don't see that scares the living crap out of you. Show the boy his bloody body flailing up out of the water. That you don't need to show the shark.
Yeah. It's true. That's
it.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. All right. I could talk about Jaws for a freaking hour. I love the movie so much.
And my friend does have a Jaws Every Minute podcast. You should check it out. One of my critic
Oh,
friends.
really? I'll check that out.
Really good.
For sure.
Really good.
Now here's one. I think I did see it, but I don't remember it. What's the name of this movie?
Tremors.
Yeah, that's right. With Kevin Bacon.
Yes. And I actually saw this for the first time last year, I think, sometime at the Regal has a mystery movie thing where they do on, like, I think it's on a Monday or whatever, and they give you clues leading up to the movie, and so I saw PG-13 as thriller horror, some different clues, and then you go and it was Tremors, and it was really fun to get to see it on the big screen. I'd never seen it before. It has a really fun cast. About this hick town, and there's these underground kind of creatures that are killing people, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm noticing that the correct formula for the almost horror comedy creature feature is to set it with a Southern group of characters, because they're just kind of, they play them off like idiots, even though they might not be idiots, but I don't know. A little bit of Southern charm goes a long way in a creature feature, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
like
Slither's another one, James Gunn's one of his earlier movies. The characters are just fantastic. So
you have Fred Ward in this, you have Reba McEntire in it.
Yep.
So that's fun. Michael Gross, who I love. He's in here, and it's got a fun, witty script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My memories of this movie is I was deployed to Afghanistan back in 2012, and I had a roommate. We lived in these trailers, and everybody had like a room that was like maybe the size of maybe like a 10 by 30, something like that. And two people would be sleeping on a bunk bed in there. And he had like a sheet down the middle, and he had his own little TV set up, or not even a TV really, just a laptop. And I would watch movies. And so he kept, his favorite horror movie was Tremors. And he would constantly say, Lee, you got to watch Tremors, man. And I think the mistake was he built the movie up to be like like Jaws,
Yeah.
And finally, when I watched Tremors, I got him sitting right next to me, and he's just like staring at me. He's not watching the movie; he's looking at me. And so I'm like, "What am I supposed to react like to something right now? What am I supposed to do here?" So I couldn't focus on the movie. I was just like focusing on him, focusing on me.
Yeah.
So I need to give it another chance. What's up, guys? You are at the end of the DDLive clip. What I do is I like to clip these out if I think the topic is important or something that's newsworthy. So thank you for watching. And if you want to watch more, you can go over here. You can go over here, click on one of those. And hopefully I can do this for 20 seconds, which I think I did. Okay, so yeah, thanks for watching, guys.